chairing in place of Jessica tonight, who's not here. So how are you doing? Are you able to get your?
No, but if we have it up on the
Yeah,
screen,
so it's here.
Okay, so welcome everybody. And I think our first order of business is to express how we leave here if there is an emergency, which is through the exits and out either of the doors. So we're all good, and we're not seeing any members of the public here and none yet online. First order of business, agenda additions, deletions, or changes. Anyone? Nope. Seeing none, we will move to open to the public for items not related to the agenda. And we have no members of the public here. If somebody joins, we can ask them, I guess, at a later point, perhaps, maybe, but none right now. So we'll go to number 3, announcements and staff report. Anyone have any announcements?
There was no climate action task force meeting between the last one and this one, between the last PC meeting and this one, but we are.
Oh yeah, is your mic on?
Now it's on. But we are working on building the pathways involving building and transportation as the first 2.
Right. Any others? And the
There's a
number,
meeting on tomorrow,
Thursday.
first. Yeah, on the 10th.
Yes.
okay. Anyone else?
Just a quick question with regard to that. Is there a lot of people participating in the audience?
Yeah, quite a few.
Thanks. Sorry, a lot of
Yeah,
participation.
quite a few, not every time, but yeah, there's quite a lot of interest, depending on what's on the agenda. But I think fewer and fewer because it's kind of, it's a bit technical at this point. So not very exciting for members of the public, but it will become when we get down to making.
And I'm getting some inquiries from the general public about it, which is great, from people that I don't know at all, who are just interested in knowing where things are at and what's the latest. And so we're trying to put it out in the city news. And as the task force gets its first set of ideas out, then we're really hoping that we can get a lot of response to it. It's hard to get sort of, what's your idea for what can be done? It's a little bit easier if there's, here's some ideas. What do you think about it?
Yeah. And you 3 are all involved, all 3 of you are on.
Michael is on.
Oh, I
it,
thought Monica was.
and I'm the staff representative to it.
And Paul.
I'm not-
Oh, I thought you were. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, so
apologize.
So we'll next at number 4, we'll get to actually the committee's reports, but this is still the announcement.
I'm
So
sorry.
no worries. No, it's totally fine. I had one announcement I was just talking about a little bit. I heard at the state level, I believe it was approved or maybe just advanced, that an enhancement to the current use, right, plan was just, did you hear that too?
Yep.
Was just approved, I think. And I think one of the most exciting things about it is that for those parcels that qualify, they do not have to actually forest their lands, harvest the lands. They can now, because the goal is to promote old growth and
Right.
protect it.
And
So I think I was very happy to hear about it, and I look forward to learning more. And I hope that maybe it can benefit some of our South Burlington landowners that have larger forests on
yeah,
their
and I think it
property.
will slow down fragmentation.
Yeah, so it does.
People,
Very exciting. And
Yeah.
that was a specific recommendation that came out of the state climate action plan. So it's nice to see that that's being implemented. So
Making its way. Yeah, thank you.
I have a few if you're ready.
Yep.
Few exciting things to report. One, Tom DePietro was officially announced yesterday as being our permanent Public Works Director.
okay,
Tom has been our Deputy Director for Environmental Services for the last few years, and before that was the Stormwater Superintendent. He's been with the city since 2005 and is certainly, at least in the stormwater world, one of, if not the top person in the entire state. And now he's going to get to spread his wings a little bit more broadly on public works and we get to help him fill out the rest of the team. So that's really, really exciting news. In addition, gosh, what was my other one, Kelsey? I had another big one.
U-Mall?
Oh, yes, that was it.
Yeah.
The U-Mall is under new ownership officially.
Yeah, minor.
So it's been owned by a company that was essentially owning it for the purposes of, they took it over in the bankruptcy. It is now, as of yesterday or the day before, owned by a company called Eastern Development, which has, they've got some dynamic people who are really excited to do, we've had one meeting with them to do some, really neat things that are really in line with what the form-based code and what the city's vision is. They are also the owner of the building, but not the land at the Staples Plaza. So they are familiar with South Burlington. And that will be also handy with the idea that those are two of the key properties associated with the bike ped bridge. And they're very, very supportive of that moving forward. So, so that's some very exciting news. Been a long time coming for that.
So is Eastern Development a company that does operate malls in general? Is that their business?
They do malls. They do, I guess, what would have been called 10 years ago, a lifestyle center. They're moving into more mixed use areas of housing, of places that are used 24/7, which is essentially what we're looking to do. So
So we may get some housing over there as well as commercial,
I mean,
long term.
yes, I mean, that's a goal that we expressed to them, and that was something that they expressed that they're interested in as well. So very
Super.
exciting.
So as when we get to the comp plan component, if there's any ideas you have that we could be keeping in mind to help make that as robust and awesome as possible, that will be fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yay.
So I think those are my two big announcements for the day.
That's
There's a
awesome.
third one, Paul,
What's that, Sue?
the expiration of the mask mandate.
Yes. Thank you, Sue. So the council last night let the mask mandate expire. So what is in place now is a recommendation for masks to be worn, but not a requirement. So that's where we're at. And then city, across the rest of the city, it's up to each business to decide what they want to do.
Cool. And I think that the schools are holding a special meeting tomorrow night, or maybe it's tonight, where I believe that will be addressed as
Okay.
well.
Great.
And I don't know
Yeah.
what the outcome
I
is.
went to a store today where there was a sign on the door that, we'd like you to wear a mask. We don't insist.
Where's the corporate headquarters, do you know? Roseanne?
I'm not 100% sure, but I want to say Boston area.
Okay.
That's great news.
Yes.
Okay, so if that's everything for 3, we'll be moving on to 4, 2 minutes ahead of schedule. And that would be commissioners' reports. And we heard from the Climate Action Committee, but was there anything else, Michael, that you wanted to?
No, that's it. And there may be more after Thursday's meeting, but
Paul, would you like to say anything?
Sure. We had a very lively, I would say, meeting of the airport rezoning task force. And probably should give you, I guess, the summary of where we kind of ended with it. And that is we've asked Brandy to look at 3 different scenarios, I guess. One would be for us to say no to the airport. The other would be to do nothing, to just, kind of remain, wouldn't be neutral, but we wouldn't say no, we wouldn't say yes, we'd just leave it there. So that would,
status quo, leave things as they are.
yeah.
Right.
And then, of course, the third was to I think, Monica, was to pursue, given the tenor of the committee, pursuing what kind of development would be done there if development were to be done there.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and the legal staff, the city's legal staff is going to look at it because of the question of whether it's a taking or not for us to say no or to do nothing. So, Kelsey, do you have any other thoughts about that?
No, that's about it. My understanding of the third option is some version of a few rezoning options, like to change something and to provide a couple of options for what that something could be.
Who's the legal staff now? I know Amanda is, and
Yep. So I've been in touch with Amanda, the deputy city attorney, about some of these legal questions, and we're working on that.
okay.
And
Who's
then
the-
sorry.
Who's the legal attorney now?
The city
who's
attorney, his name is Colin McNeil.
Colin McNeil, I don't know who that is, yeah.
And then as the number 2 option, in my mind, as my notes, I was writing it as defer. Because we have the comp plan coming up and it's relates to the whole issue. So that's, I think it's the way you
Yeah.
said it was a good way to
I think
summarize
we all
that.
got a message from Megan just this afternoon, right, about everything, right?
I didn't see that.
Didn't get that?
Yeah, I saw an email.
Oh, to the planning commission?
Yeah. But not some-
Okay.
So that's
I
it.
actually spoke to her after I received it. They said, you know, there's going to be nobody here. Jessica's not here. I didn't know Duncan wouldn't be here. And it would be better if what she wrote she should say when we're actually dealing with this particular report.
Yeah, I thought it was a little premature for her to
So she
raise that,
agreed.
but yeah, she's concerned about it. She's concerned about the neighborhood, you know, so. That she always has been concerned about the neighborhood. That's her neighborhood.
Yeah. And I think that her comment was tied to the comp plan conversation as well, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
yeah.
All right, and I really don't have an update from the Affordable Housing Committee right now. So I think that's it for committees, right? So I think we're ready to move on to point 5, which is the official map, where we're reviewing proposed updates to the citywide official map and possible action to approve planning commission report and warn public hearing on the proposed amendments. Should I keep going, Paul, or do you want to?
Well-
I was just going to open it up, but please, no, continue.
Have we all read it? I moved to warn a public hearing on March the 22nd, is it?
This one, I believe, is
Oh, no, April
10th.
12th,
April 12th?
You see
Which
the
one?
to amend
language?
the official map as shown in the planning commission packet dated March 8th, 2022, and described by OM 22-01, and to approve the accompanying planning commission report.
Is there a
Second.
second? Then before we vote, is there any discussion? It looked to me like it addressed what we talked about in our last meeting, so
Mhm.
it looks
Right.
great to me.
Yep.
Okay,
Good.
then all in favor?
Aye.
We have all 4 saying yes,
All right,
so that.
great, thank you.
passes.
I got the map up just in time before your vote.
I had a question on the map, Paul. Is there any way that there can be, excuse me, a connection from the end of Garden Street? I know you can't do it from Market because of all these buildings in the way, but if you continued west,
I think
across.
that there is a good chance we can do that.
because you could get behind there.
Yeah, I think that the way that we're looking at this is, if you recall, we put in the big project to the Regional Planning Commission to do a proper review of where this can all go. I would say absolutely, this is really a placeholder to make sure that all the property owners are aware that this is where interest is. And to your point specifically, Michael, in our first meeting with the new owners of the U-Mall, we did talk about that. And they were, in fact, they brought it up of saying, oh, it'd be great to be able to go around the building also. So I think we're of shared mind on that.
Great. Is that
Okay.
it?
Monica, could you bring the microphone closer? I'm
You
having
having a hard
trouble.
time hearing me? Okay,
So we will warn the public hearing for April 12th. Thank you.
excellent. Okay, so we are on to number 6, which is a discussion of possible ARPA funds. We are about 15 minutes ahead, and I don't know if that's an issue. We don't have any members of the public here. Is there a reason to?
No,
Okay.
as the only thing that is time sensitive is if you had warned a public hearing for a specific time,
Okay,
you need to wait. Otherwise, these are just estimated times for our own purposes of time management.
okay, great. So ARPA funds, this is meant to be a broad discussion of ideas. And I believe in the packet, there was some information that we would have all looked at. Do you want to give any kind of background, Paul, or Kelsey?
I think a lot of it is contained in there. Just to say that we have about $4.5 million total that has come to the city. A portion of that has been allocated already. We got some very exciting news, I guess, a month or 2 months ago, that communities that received allocations of less than, I think it was $10 million, basically have very few restrictions on how the money can be used. Communities that receive over that, there's a whole bunch of different categories that it goes into, but it really can be used for a lot of broad purposes. And so the council at their last, just before the election meeting, had their first dialogue about the ways in which they might want to think about the money. They're having a follow-up at their next meeting. Various city committees have started that are topic-based committees have been talking about what might be of interest in their topics. And commission agreed at your last meeting too. The commission, other than the council, is really the only policy-making board in the city that has sort of a broad view of things. And so we thought that it might be a neat opportunity for you to think about and discuss both the how and the how you might want to think about the money. And then if there are specific projects that you'd like to talk about, then we can relay that to the council and city manager. So that's what this item is.
So would
I'd
anyone like
like
to
to-
share some
Could I
ideas?
get the entire 4 million?
Michael wants it.
Yeah.
It's probably
Well,
funny-
Paul said it's very flexible. You can
Very
spend it on
flexible.
anything you like.
Let's do it.
I
Planning
think-
commission party.
Yeah.
it's Plenty of cities where the planning commission is getting their share of it.
Would anyone like to begin? Any ideas?
Well.
Well, you know, I have probably, I jotted down 16 different projects that I thought it would be relevant, from lighting on Kennedy Drive to an enhanced, not a greenhouse, but place where, we can really start to plant some trees, Wheeler Park or whatever, that in turn can be placed around. And I kept going through this and I said, my gosh, every one of us, others aren't here, but I'm sure everyone has a bunch of choices.
Mhm.
So I narrowed it down sort of mentally and just saying, well, maybe it should possibly go into 3 different buckets. And one bucket, 1/3 would be for housing, and specifically for Habitat for Humanity. And the second,
Typically for what, Ted?
I'm sorry, Habitat for Humanity,
Okay.
and which is affordable housing.
Sure.
And 1/3 in open space dash parks. And another third, which would be for future unallocated at this point. And within those, categories, there's a lot of possible options. But to pick, okay, here are the 16 of mine and 12 of Paul's and so on. So that's what my suggestion is. So not sure if it will go any farther, but simplicity.
Yeah. We only have to spend it by 2026, right?
Correct.
Yes, that's correct. I would add the caveat that depending on the type of project, that doesn't necessarily mean starting it on December 18th, 2026.
No.
But it might also enable that I think that's kind of still up in the air, isn't it? I heard a discussion today about how there's definitely people interested in seeking clarity on, does the project have to be completed by then, or can it even be in a holding pattern waiting, as long as it's officially,
Yeah.
yeah.
It'll
so-
be interesting. You know, the federal government often has a fair amount of leniency with things like that. That said, the whole point of this funding is recovery funds.
Mhm.
And so if it's sort of allocated, but it doesn't happen until 2030, that's a decade after the emergency. So I wouldn't put all my eggs in the assumption that they'll be lenient on that, because I think that at least the current administration certainly wants to see that money spent.
Mhm.
Well, I think, speaking for myself, I'd like to see it spent too. If we go to the trouble of identifying these wonderful projects, that we should do them, not wait.
Kelsey, did you have
Yeah,
something you
I
wanted to
just
say?
wanted to point out a little bit, so the memo that was in was in the packet was written for city council by the deputy city manager. But I found the discussion questions on pages 8 and 9 of the packet to be pretty good at focusing the discussion and the thought process. Sort of to what Ted was saying is, everybody can make a list of 20 projects, but having a little bit of focus on the driving policy decisions behind choosing those projects. So the first question was, who or what are we trying to support with these funds? And the second was, should these funds be targeted towards one-time transformational investments or to support already identified projects such as those in the city's CIP? So I think they're very related, but the first is, you know, what are we trying to support? What are the long-term policies? What are the underlying goals of the city of South Burlington that we can support with this injection of short-term money? And then the second is, how do we treat, is this an opportunity to do something new, or is it an opportunity to fully fund something that was already planned for? So I just wanted to point out those two questions as you all have this discussion as something that may frame how you are thinking about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot that you pointed that out. Thank you. And that did help with the ideas that I was going through. Paul, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. I would like to see us do something really completely new and essentially set up, I guess, what I would think of as an anti-poverty project, and put the money into that so that, you know, nobody is hungry and everybody has a place to live. And, you know, I'd like to take that kind of approach to this. I don't know how we would go about that, but that's my thought, you know, that
Maybe sort of
We-
like fund the, I'm sorry,
take care of everybody in the city that needs help, which we always talk about doing, and we never have any money to do it. That's always the answer, you know. Yeah, we'd love to do it, but we don't have any money. You know, so we have some money now to do that.
And it seems, to what Kelsey pointed out, question 2 is talking about, is this like a one-time transformational investment? Or is it, well, I guess to support something that's been going, but in your idea, would it be, do you see it as a one-time?
Well, no,
Make-
you know, it'd be important to have it over a stretch of many years. I mean, it's not like you want to, you know, solve poverty for this year and next year everybody goes back to being poor, you know.
So it could be part of that third bucket that Ted mentioned.
Yeah, but a
Housing.
specific project that we as South Burlington, you know, altruistically take on and show the world what we can do.
Hey, Paul,
Yep.
I believe that the city council has already allocated a portion of that money for affordable housing, if I'm not mistaken. That's
Yeah.
why some of it is already spent, and you get to discuss what the rest of it goes for.
Yeah, I'm really not talking about, you know, affordable housing. You know, to me, that seems like, I don't know, a grand concept or something like that. I mean, to get to work, you know, on the streets right now.
Poverty relief,
Yeah, I
not
mean, you can,
necessarily housing.
anything, sure. I mean, you could have rent controls. You could pay people's rent.
Well, can I add something to that concept, Paul? Because I think a big part of poverty of people of all ages also connects to mental illness. And there is such a dire need for improved mental illness in the state. But I wonder if there are special opportunities within South Burlington that can fit into that as well, care for.
Well, if you start dealing with the homeless population, then you're going
Mhm.
to find that a lot of the homeless population are people with psychiatric problems.
I wonder what the budget is of the food shelf, you know, again, at that third bucket, which would be a little over $1.2 million or something like that, if I'm right.
Right.
But if 50,000 a year, that would go a long way, but to enhance the food shelf.
I was thinking that organizations like that would be the vehicles you'd want to work through.
And I have no idea what their existing budget is, and
Right.
is it 25,000 or 50, but you know, maybe possibly throwing in that would be a laudable, even though it's sort of one time, but it could be perpetual for 20 years or so. So, but it does run out. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
You could
that's the
endow
diff-
organizations like that, only I really want to deal with things directly, not endowed, but you know, just get to work now.
Mhm.
Michael, did you have?
No, I was thinking back to Ted's idea, which I think is good because we're not, yeah, as somebody said, everybody's going to have dozens of ideas, and we can't get them. I don't think we can get to grips with them tonight, but breaking it down into 3 big buckets, 2 of which are quite clear. One is 1/3 going to Habitat for Humanity to build perpetually affordable housing in South Burlington. And the second for the Open Space Fund. And the third for a variety of projects, among them, some that have already been mentioned here, but mental health support in South Burlington, poverty relief of one kind or another. Maybe the best way forward to, otherwise we could be here for weeks tonight, is to maybe make a motion out of what Ted has suggested. Or do you want to do that, Ted?
Right, well, I can make the motion with a caveat that I can certainly see people filling in some of those categories. In other words, if we say open space, maybe people with it would say, well, I'd like to sort of have focus, but yes, I'd make the motion that,
Certainly the third bucket would be, you know, more open.
So
That-
feel free
that-
to make the motion.
that-
I haven't given my idea yet, but we can, because it might add to that. It might help fulfill. So did
I'll
you,
second whatever that
do you
may-
want to
wanna
make the
that
motion?
again?
okay, yeah, make the motion. And if it's seconded, I guess discuss it and then,
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, so should we just discuss? And so what I was going to contribute to the conversation was, I know that it's not, it's a good pot of money. It's not, you know, enough. It's not a huge pot of money, but I would hope that we could look at our aging infrastructure and in this special time, I would really hope that the city and schools can work together to maybe review their aging infrastructure and needs. And clearly additional bonds would be needed to do most of the work, but maybe there are some things that when the 2 groups can work together, they can find small pieces that can really go a long way, like look in a new way at specific issues that can help each other. I know our budgets and all of our policies are very separate. So during this time, if there's a way looking at old buildings or buildings that don't exist or other forms of infrastructure that can really make a difference and help. You know, our schools have big parking lots should there be a lot of EV there for them that the community can also use on the off hours? You know, are there things that we can do as a community together, looking at when both of those groups come together? So I don't know if that kind of fits into the.
Lots more buses and much fewer students driving to school,
Mhm.
which would be a big thing that's gonna come up on me. I will certainly bring it up in the
Yeah.
climate action task force because it's ridiculous to have hundreds of kids coming to school every day by car when there's a bus service right in their doors, on their doorstep.
Mhm. And how can that help?
Yeah.
You know, how can those buses help seniors during the day when
Yeah.
the kids are in school? You know, are there ways that we can look at things, putting the two pots together?
Michael, I
So-
would recommend that you not come visit our office at about 8 AM, 2 floors up from here,
Mhm.
if that's something that is frustrating to you, because it will require a meditation class afterwards for you.
And I will not
You'll see the
invite
dance of
my.
all the cars coming around and around and around.
Yes. And I will not let my 16-year-old daughter know that there might be an open
Hey,
public hearing on it.
look, if there was a bus on Dorset Street down to near where I would live, I would park in the synagogue and take the bus.
So that was my.
Hmm.
My,
So, Well, that's.
Big request.
that's a Great ideas, certainly for bucket number 3.
so I don't know if that kind of fits within bucket 3, or if we need to add anything to a motion pertaining to it, but.
Along with this motion, I wonder if maybe each of us, and then those who are not here, might be able to draw up some of their, interests, and rather than we each voting on a kind of deal, at least maybe submit that along with the idea, the concept of the third necessary, and then fill it in, like, again, under the parks. Or give me an idea, which I think is terrific, my frustration of a lot of more housing, but and especially over in this area. But again, I keep harping on ad nauseam. Maybe not enough green space and not enough play area. Well, part of this third could be a study made of, assuming that there's gonna be this, maybe the study would find that the city would have. Oh, I'm sorry. I
Apologize, I keep doing this. A study maybe for X number of dollars that the city could do to find if there are any places that we could buy half an acre or 3/4 of an acre, anything, just to accommodate, more than the formula that we are now using for green space. So, I mean, that's just sort of an idea of how we can fill in those thirds. With each has a great idea.
Mhm. Yeah, and on that note, I did share with Kelsey, poor Kelsey gets emails from me when I just have a thought. And this kind of fits into that though, which is if we're going to be moving more residential into the urban overlay district, and we did discuss in the general PDU, the fact that, they don't get the credit if the building is on the opposite side of a 4-lane street to a civic park. I think it would be a good idea to specifically map out on same sides of a 4-lane road where people can have walkable access to a civic space. And are there parcels that the city could
Mhm.
purchase and do something with? So that fits right in with what
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying. And I think it's very timely, given what we're trying to do in that urban overlay district.
Great.
A question for you all. I know that there's a lot of. Thank you. I know that there's a lot of emphasis building on the subject of climate change. Do you see, in your view, a role for this funding as it relates to that? Does it go into these buckets? Is it a lens through which this and other decisions should be made, or is that a separate thing in your mind? I'm just curious, because I know that this is something that
Certainly.
has come up very
I
frequently.
didn't think about climate change for this $4 million because it wouldn't go very far if we start. I mean, we've already divided it up quite a bit. $4,089,000 is not a hell of a lot. And in the context of the climate action plan, I have no idea what the cost the implementation cost will be for South Burlington, and it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. We are at, yeah, we probably wouldn't be able to spend it by 2026. So I see that as a separate requirement, and possibly needing bonding or because it's not going to be cheap. It's going to be. a
Does anyone else have
significant
a
amount of
thought
money.
on that?
Point well taken, Paul, but, maybe as a lot can fall into that third bucket. And not to reiterate what Michael says, but we don't know what's being proposed from the state or other kinds of things. It's conceivable that, we could rationalize that there is, with the affordable housing, that the criteria would be electric heat, or some other, situations that would work towards the climate change. I mean, if we have 1,500 homes all cranking out natural gas, we ain't going the right direction.
Well, I think that, hearing this and also hearing a lot of the work that the Climate Action Group is thinking about, and in reading other plans, it's almost, I think, picking up on what you're saying about the housing, maybe the lens of climate action isn't necessarily about this bucket of funds. It's about every dollar, every day
Mhm.
of, maybe it's a requirement that it's going to be affordable housing, but it's going to be highly efficient affordable housing. It's going to be in support of our open spaces with a lens of, also thinking about climate change. The location of the housing is supportive of the other goals that are
Yeah.
supportive of climate
mean,
change.
if-
So
if-
maybe it's not a designation of funds other than maybe, it could be also conceivably in that third bucket, seed money for condominiums to start to be able to get EV charging in or something like that. But a lot of it sounds like what you're talking about is baked into the other pieces as
Yeah,
a
I
way
think
of
if we're going to
filtering, not a project in and of itself.
Paul, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
A tiny little thing. It would be nice if we could say that absolutely none of the money can be used for studies or for consultants.
would be nice.
You know what's funny about that?
What?
Mine was almost going to be, was actually the complete opposite, but it tied specifically to the aging infrastructure. That can we make sure that we understand from science what what harm our old buildings may be causing, and compare that financially or environmentally to what a new or a different way, what the outcome may be if we go a different path. And I don't know if it's who does that. It'd be great if we had the information.
What do you mean by infrastructure?
Well, couple different things. And this again, my mind is, I'm trying to combine city and school together, which I don't know if I should do, right? But I mean, we drive past these huge parking lots and these very old buildings. And those are the school property, but are there other things that first of all can make those entire areas more efficient? That we can do together, meaning the city and the schools. Are the buildings themselves, there's big issues around it. And I know this is a city committee, not a school committee, but are there more efficient ways as a committee or community we could do something to have a better green footprint in those areas than we're doing right now? And another example of that is if we're looking for places to get more EV charging, I mean, can we look at putting that? We talked before about having a car park a long time ago at the Shaw's parking lot on Shelburne Road. That whole, it was like one idea that we discussed many, many years ago. Maybe do our schools become at different times hubs for that with EV charging? And what would the financial benefit be? So an analysis that can then help inform the community when they are asked to support a bond for something, for whoever's bond it's going to be. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's being able to do an analysis with science and with experts.
Because there's another part of infrastructure that's just fix the roads, fill the potholes kind of stuff too,
Well, one thing I thought of, doesn't Marquardt have to remove asbestos residue from their buildings?
Well, this is kind of
That's-
out of our city
That's the
purview,
kind
but
of thing you have in mind, maybe?
well, right. And,
Because
but
it's a
then,
health issue.
right, well, exactly. But like, for example, I don't know if we should even be getting into this kind of detail, but I know that when Paul and I were on the master planning task force, there was discussion of like at the high school, if you even remove a linoleum tile, then you're opening things up. So actually, the environmentally safe thing to do is leave the linoleum tile there,
Yeah.
because then it's in place, but then that's there for so long. How long can that continue? And what other buildings do we have? What is our firehouse on Dorset? What's that condition? And the building next to it, that the school is now leasing. And are there better things that we can do with property that the city and the school own to make a better impact and maybe help overall? But then to your point about roads, it can also be, and this tied into something I sent to Kelsey. Are there areas, now that we've completed Article 12, are there areas where we don't have sewer or water that are not in the SEQ and are potentially, buildable in the future? And would it make it easier for that to happen? If there's anything on the official map that's lacking in terms of sewer or water, is this a time to map it? I wasn't thinking of it in terms of this money, but that maybe could be something.
I would imagine that schools and mental health and other entities are receiving this money also, or some version of it. Do you know, Paul?
There is a significant state allocation that will then be distributed to go to other to groups. They haven't decided exactly how that's going to work, but that is out there. And then, not related to ARPA, there is of course the massive infrastructure bill that was passed last year also, that will become available for communities and states.
Right.
And so as you think about something like aging infrastructure, there may be some really neat opportunities with that. I think what makes this bucket especially unique is that it has very few strings attached to it. I think that's the unique thing about this one. Unlike, the other ones are huge amounts of money, but they are with the in the buckets to which they're attached. And I don't know enough about those, but I have the sense that some of the things that you're talking about may fall into that.
There was one other thought I had too. There are some other Vermont communities that are coming up with some really cool ideas. And it would just be fantastic if before anything was, confirmed, if we could all hear what other communities are doing, because they might want to learn from us and we can learn from them. And, yeah. So I don't know how to do that, but it would be fantastic.
I think that's a neat idea. I've got a couple of ideas. One, check in with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. We can certainly do that. The managers of the Chittenden County communities meet once or twice a month, and they can share it. And then our professional organization, the planners, have our own sort of group, and I'd be more than happy to poll, give me your best idea that your town's come up with.
Yeah, let's share because,
I think that's a neat idea.
yeah.
I can tell you
Also,
one thing
parking.
I can tell you one thing the city of Burlington is doing.
What's that, Sue?
They are offering a one-time tax credit, property tax credit, to people who meet 4 criteria because of the impact of the reappraisal.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's above and beyond the property tax.
Above and
rebate?
beyond what the state did. Yeah, it's only for people in the city of Burlington. You have to have your property has to be assessed for less than $500,000. Your taxes have had to go up at least 50%. Can't remember the third one. And you have to attest that during the pandemic, you have suffered a loss of income. Remember what the third one was?
So we have a motion on the table, right?
Yes, you do
Yes.
have one request for a member of the public to
Oh, good.
pose a question also.
Hooray.
Noah, are you still there?
Noah? Well, we can't hear you, Noah, but if, there you
I
are.
am still here. I am still here.
Good.
Just working it out. Okay. With the allocation of funds that will be received, I'm wondering if maybe we should be maybe the planning commission, DRB, I mean, maybe everyone should be thinking about something in the longer game. I've heard a lot of great ideas, and they are great ideas, and those are definitely things that are needed. Assistance for huge increases in the taxes, and assistance for low-income housing. But one of the things I think that may benefit South Burlington greatly is if we really address, or not even address, but we really concentrate on doing things to incentivize and promote our new city center. And, it doesn't sound like a lot of money for building homes, or, it doesn't seem like it can make great change. But one of the things I think it can make great change for is on something that is kind of hidden. Like, I personally feel like, man, that's a nice amount of money to incentivize the new owner of the U Mall and assist in demolishing Sears and the parking lot, or to revitalize the mall and bring in an anchor store. The thing for me that I keep I keep coming back to is, if we could demolish Sears and that parking lot, then a builder could come right in, and if we were to zone it as residential and go to the max, I think it's 5 floors or 6 floors. I think it's 5 floors. So on the top floors, you would have like beautiful apartments downtown, a mile from Church Street, in the heart of city center, with views of the Adirondacks and views of the greens. And you could have, even on the lower floors, low-income housing or assisted housing. And then what happens for the mall is you get like an anchor of a population. And then and besides like one Chipotle, you get like some anchor, you get a cafe, and you get other stores. And or maybe we build a land bridge with the money. Like there's things we could do that might not pay off in a year or 6 months. It may not feel like it's being a huge effect. Yet what it could do is 2, 3, 4 years down the line, it's like planting a seed. We did something that a developer just doesn't want to do, and we prepped it for them. Like, it's now there. Now you have a clean slate. Now come in and do what you want to do, or what, not what you want to do, but what we've decided that we want, and they build it, and the people come, and there's ways to incorporate like the tax base and the business community and low-income housing and public transit lines, in a way that even though it's not a lot of money, sometimes, just giving that kind of incentive to someone to do a bigger thing is enough. And I think that if we really think about it and chew on it and not go for a quick fix, we may be able to do so much more with so much less than most people would think. If we decided to invest it wisely in something that will grow fruit rather than something that is a small thorn. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No,
I'm sorry, could I just,
yeah, Ted?
no, did you hear at the very beginning that the mall is under new ownership?
Yes, I did. I'm
Okay,
aware of it.
great. Yeah,
But I
good.
think, again, that kind of incentive to the new owner. I mean, because they're a new owner, they're definitely probably excited and clearly invested in it. And so if we kind of can facilitate little things like zoning outdoor restaurants, we may be able to get like an anchor store, like a Cheesecake Factory. Or Dave and Buster's for wintertime. But there are ways that the 5 million could do, I think, so much more to actually raise money for the city. Like we could spend the 5 or 4 million, 3, whatever it is, to actually increase the revenue to the town. That giving it away, which is of course great, and I wish we could give away. I wish we could help everyone. But one of the things I think that that Vermont seriously lacks is the deep forethought to grow. I'm constantly amazed that there's not an outdoor restaurant in Burlington. Really, I mean, there's like 2 or 3 on the lake. It's like it boggles my mind that we don't have a lakefront pavilion, or that we don't have any type of outdoor center. Apple Tree Place in Williston. I've talked to the leaders in Williston. They were hoping to do that, but the problem is that the town really wasn't behind it. The fact that we have a city center, and even a small thing like a pedestrian bridge, which could be funded from just the amount of money to help the new owners of the mall to be solvent, to maybe invest into the property, or can grow more revenue than we're actually going to spend. So if we spend 3 million, but in the next 10 years we make 10 million, then it's better for the community. And then with that money, we can do even more. And I would hope that the long game is practiced more in our planning. It seems to be we go for whatever's just like right in front of us over and over and over again. And this is like free money. So if there's an opportunity to plant a little seed, I think we should do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Okay,
To
yeah.
withdraw,
Yeah.
I mean,
Just
to,
one thing that Noah brought to mind is we're talking about $1 million, which seems like a lot of money, but $1 million in affordable housing is 4 houses, and $1 million in open space is 10 acres. I'm not saying don't do that or anything, but it's sobering to think, that $1 million is pretty much in this world that we're dealing with pretty much nothing.
what I was going to say, the Noah's idea, I think, to bring people to live in our city center, which we do have a few now along Market Street, but this would be a significant population of, I would imagine, working age folk who want to live in apartments. They want to be near downtown facilities, the kinds of facilities that we hope we'll have along Market Street. I think he alluded to that. Once you get that kind of population here, then you can get the ridership that you might need to expand public transit. It's what comes first. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I was, as he was talking, I was wondering, I don't know how this would work. Can any of those funds be used to invest on behalf of the city, whether it's in a green fund or something relating to the U Mall? Is there a way that South Burlington City can be a shareholder in something that can benefit the city and can generate revenue?
Yeah, it's an
And
interesting
particularly if
idea.
it's going towards a green fund that is supporting green companies, be them, whether they're here. It'd be amazing to support them here, because then that will bring in more green jobs, whether it's building or something. So some kind of investment fund could be.
It's great if the stock market keeps going up all the time.
Well, you better knock on something right now, right?
Well, didn't
Well, is the
the
U-Mall,
$1 million that we already was allocated for housing, was that for the O'Brien project?
It's not, it has not been allocated to any specific project. It's that the council has made a commitment that that amount of money at a minimum would go towards the subject of affordable housing, the bucket of affordable
I thought
housing.
it was for the two buildings that.
There's
were
not
pre-
been, oh,
That was a presentation.
yes. The council last month agreed to submit a grant application to the state through the Community Development Block Fund for $1 million. That's not our money.
Right.
That's only municipalities are eligible. So we would be the pass-through on federal money,
We'd get the money and we'd
right?
fund.
Which is how we've funded several other affordable housing, but that's not that $1 million. The $1 million the council has talked about of the ARPA funds is a bucket of money that they have sort of to Ted's point of thirds. That's a commitment that they've talked about, but they've not assigned it to anywhere in particular, nor to anything more detailed than affordable housing.
well, is
And-
U-Mall form-based code district?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep,
Oh, and
Staples is too, right?
it is, yes,
And the hotel across the street.
yes.
and what about TIF?
The,
Is there anything we can do to include it?
trying to remember, it is in the neighborhood development area. I don't know if it's in the TIF district.
Is there anything
Um,
we can do to get it into the TIF district?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
You're asking the mall being in the TIF district? I thought the legislature disallowed it.
Was a decision made?
I thought, well, I don't know.
The legislature does not like changes to TIF districts, I guess is the short answer that maybe you're answering
Hmm.
for me in that direction.
That's what I thought. I don't, yeah.
I can get a firm answer on that.
Especially given the circumstance. I mean,
Yeah.
The TIF district
You have to
is
start with
different than
liking
the
TIF
form-based code
districts
district.
for the
Yeah.
legislature.
yeah. All right, well, that was a great discussion. Is there anything else anyone wants to add? Or Kelsey, is there anything more you're looking for at this point?
No, I think it's been a really good discussion of some priorities of the commission and
You do have a motion and a second on the
Yeah.
table.
True. We have a
One of
motion.
the nice things about assigning, say, the one bucket to Habitat for Humanity is that we can specify how it should be used. And somebody mentioned energy efficiency. There can be strings attached which would fit in with what the city wants to achieve. So, you get this money, but you have to build it. They have to be perpetually affordable. They have to be in the city core or along our transit lines, and they have to, you know, we can specify the energy efficiency aspects of it. So we've got
Yeah.
we've got some say so in what's done with it in that sense.
So I have
So-
Yes,
Sure.
sir. So before we vote then on the motion, one more clarifying question I have is, so all committees and commissions are being asked this question right now, correct?
The council is being asked the question formally. The various committees have taken it upon themselves to start.
Okay,
We asked you, knowing this as the major
Okay.
policymaking group, if you'd
Okay.
like to take it on. So it's not been
Okay.
formally requested, but we spoke with the city manager's office and they're thrilled that you're having this discussion.
Okay.
So
great, okay,
it's not been asked officially of all the committees.
okay, so,
Ted, why Habitat for Humanity rather than Cathedral Square or other organizations?
Well, the short answer is that they build efficiently and cheaply. I don't want to give a statistic because
There's a lot of donated material and labor.
right.
Yeah, oh, I know, yeah, but
Yeah. So very, very cheaply. So they can buy what might be conceivably one building, they can buy 3 buildings for the same cost. As an example, whether that's exactly true or not, but so
It's
that's
definitely more bang for the buck.
exactly. Rather than to say, well, okay, we'll give a developer an allocation to build or whatever. So
well, I don't mean a developer, but I mean, there are other organizations that are building affordable or low-income housing.
well, I would agree to an amendment to that to say, not just Habitat for Humanity, but
I mean, there's
nonprofit.
the, Cathedral Square for one.
Yeah, but they can't build as cheaply as and efficiently as Habitat for Humanity can.
Habitat for Humanity builds houses too. They don't build apartment
No,
buildings.
it's really,
well, and if it has to be built in a certain time, like Habitat for Humanity itself won't be able to do all of that because of their infrastructure. So if we'd run out, so I think I like the idea of more of an open concept.
of nonprofit.
I think there's like 4 or 5 organizations that build like that, right? I've forgotten what they
Champlain
are.
Housing Trust.
Yeah,
Cathedral
the
Square.
Champlain Housing Trust, yeah.
Do you want to put that as an amendment?
I don't, you mean, as a friendly amendment to the
Right.
amendment?
Sure.
Unless you've got some reason for specifically,
That's what comes to mind and
Oh, okay.
and we've been very,
that's what I was wondering, is
Yeah.
there was a specific reason
Yep.
for Habitat versus the other organizations?
I have no stock in that.
Okay.
So let me ask one other question and that's come to mind, just to looking at it differently. And this would really be for the unallocated, but I want to ask this knowing that we're kind of looking at 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, right? Is what your buckets are. We haven't said anything about job creation. And I don't know how this money can help. Is there anything we can think of that would help our jobs sector using this that could fit into the unallocated, but I'm just,
Well, it could be the other way around, Monica, that if you have the housing available, that businesses say they can't come here because then they would be able to come here because they'd have the labor available because people could afford to live here.
Mhm.
So it's, it's
Mhm.
a chicken and egg kind of thing, or an egg and a chicken.
I can't think of anything.
I was just wondering if with Monica, if you're thinking of, larger, hundreds of employers that are having the conversation that Michael is having versus there are also opportunities for starting small businesses, supporting sole proprietorships, microloan programs, things like that, that don't require hundreds of workers that need hundreds of housing units, maybe are,
Mhm.
part-time ventures and all of these other things. Is that something that you were considering?
That's a good, sure. In
Good
fact, maybe a policy that rewards or incentivizes businesses that are making things locally, that are sourcing their product responsibly, that have
It could also be service industry companies.
Right, and have policies, is there a bar we can set for, types of businesses that we're looking for and have a fund to help them.
That's a neat
know,
idea. Something that
and
comes to
they're-
mind as you're describing that is we have a small number of large businesses that make foods, and we have a medium-sized number of home-based, small, very, very small food makers. An idea that relates to that would be, could there be something like a commercial kitchen where the business that makes the momos for sale at Healthy Living that's based in South Burlington can get incrementally larger so that it's not just out of their house, but they don't yet have to go to the, rent a whole space for themselves because they're not ready yet, or the cupcake company, or the, name whatever thing is the next.
Right,
Something like the it's not an incubator, but down on Lakeside.
Yeah, the generator space,
Yeah,
right? Which is that one sort of for
that
tech
I-
and building things. This
Mhm.
could be something in the, I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
making something up, but something in the food world.
right. Maybe it
And
has a
then,
policy around
then
it.
relates back to the food shelf too, in some way of, that I don't know.
Yeah, well, and if it leads to cementing more jobs and job growth through that, because there are a lot of people that are in that kind of that range of they're just barely able to, make the business work for themselves. But if there's that one more step that can help them hire another person locally. So I don't know, so my point is, I guess I've heard a lot of interesting ideas that fit into the unallocated, and I'm wondering if your motion is looking at 3 equal buckets or,
I think that was the original motion. Yeah.
right. And does that still sound like, I think there can be some flexibility perhaps as it's fine tuned. But what do you think about that? Is that, for what we're
Good place to
doing right
start.
now, is this a good start or?
Yeah, I mean, that was what I came up with. I mean, I think, well, the bottom line is that the city council will massage this quite, sufficiently. So this may be sort of the first draft and cut and concept, but with some of the things we filled in and, with regard to what you've mentioned and Paul and others, that we sort of get the idea where maybe some of those, points that people have been mentioning fill in.
So can we summarize maybe some of the unallocated, just so some of the ideas that were there, because they're good ones. We heard the hunger, homelessness, which
Dirt
would
in the
fit in,
streets, yeah.
Food shelf kind of idea.
which would fit into unallocated. We talked about some looking at environmental,
There was a tree nursery idea.
Well, I was mentioning nursery, but that might even, a nursery, for not children, but for trees. Someone mentioned a tax credit for,
Sue mentioned the Burlington's doing
Yeah.
the tax credit.
yeah, Sue did, yeah.
Mhm. And then the idea of, and I don't know how hopefully it would complement what the Climate Action Task Force is doing, but if there is a fund for, some kind of science-based analysis to help us figure out if there are some things that we can do better with our both city and school properties, but I don't know what we would call that, but kind of a environmental
Infrastructure improvement.
analysis. So it's, if we can't actually pay for the improvements yet, is there a way we can at least fund,
Right.
yeah. And then, and Noah offered the concept of, specific benefits. Perhaps we target the U-Mall for that, given its importance to the city in supporting demo or some other thing. And that tied into the concept of there potentially being an investment fund for South Burlington to use these dollars that we're receiving to invest into something. And then that last piece we just talked about was, and maybe it's part of an investment fund, but something to support businesses to, and maybe they're the smaller businesses in particular, to with the goal of securing and increasing employees.
Shared,
jobs.
I think we were talking about some kind of shared facility for small businesses.
Yep. So how do we
into the-
summarize that? Yeah, an incubator of sorts. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think what Ted had said at the beginning was maybe the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and then here are some ideas that aren't necessarily the vote. The ideas aren't the
Exactly.
vote of the commission because all sorts of people may have really good ideas as to how to fill in the buckets.
Right.
Yep.
That's. is that
But
a-
those are examples that would fall
Yeah.
under that unallocated kind of, right? Unless they fit in the others. Right? So we've,
So before you vote, Paul had suggested that maybe the affordable housing piece be described slightly more broadly. Was that a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Yeah, just take that specific organization out, right?
Right, nonprofit organization.
Yeah, any,
Right.
yeah.
so are we clear on the motion then?
Mhm.
The first bucket being nonprofit?
Yeah.
Housing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone good? Ready to vote?
Mhm.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
All four are in support. And it hustles.
it's so funny to have just the four of us. Huh?
I know. Okay, thank you. And so now we are moving on to discussion about the beginning of the 2024 comprehensive plan, which will be here before we know it.
Hmm.
And this is meant to be a discussion of very high level at this point, without even getting into looking at the comp plan. Kelsey, did you want to give us a kind of a setup for this?
Sure.
When we begin?
Just a second, where's, since I've got a blank sheet here, where's the street renaming?
That's
on
coming
the
after
agenda?
this.
Comes out, okay.
All I wanted to jump in and say is more or less what was already included in the packet in the single page memo that I included, just
Mhm.
framing the discussion today as high level policies to direct the development of the comp plan over the next 1.5 to 2 years. And to think of the comp plan as well, not just to think of it, the comprehensive plan is the overarching policy document of the city and of the city council. So thinking of what needs to be prioritized, what maybe was underemphasized that should be more emphasized topically at sort of a very high level, not at a sort of granular detail level at this point. To really start the conversation about what we need to be doing for the structure of the 2024 comp plan and the topics that we want to be included in the mindset of this is the document that sets the policies and priorities for approximately the next decade of South Burlington. And I had a few guiding questions, but really it's just today's opportunity is just what have the planning commissioners seen as areas that need to be included, that were never included, that need to be emphasized, that were not, things that were overemphasized that maybe should be de-emphasized, and what those high level, topical areas may be. And that's really the broad brush today. And
Well, and I think when we were talking earlier too, no one should feel that they have to be so well versed in the comp plan that
Mhm.
you read it in full yesterday to prepare for the meeting. This is really very, very, high end.
Yeah.
Because we'll have plenty of time to get back into that level of depth again. So I think when we do this, it'd be nice to do, full table again and have each of us kind of just share some ideas if that
I
sounds
just
good.
have one unfortunate comment to make, which is that we've been trying to align the LDRs with the comp plan. And I've made this point before, not here, but to some councils, that we should write the comp plan and then write the LDRs to fit. We're out of sync. And so we're going to do this over again. Not that we have a choice. I mean, we've done what we've done. We've done 3 years of damn hard work, good work. But it's an interesting thing for me as a newcomer to this whole regulatory regime, that we're out of sync, and how to get back in sync will be quite hard.
Well, just to jump in there, I think that's the purpose, and that's the goal with this comp plan, is that the priorities that the city sets and the policies that the city sets with their 2024 comp plan should then inform and direct changes and updates to the LDRs in the subsequent, 2024 to 2032 timeframe. So this is the opportunity to set those big goals and those big policy considerations that then hopefully the focus of the planning commission in the 8 years subsequent to that will be on altering, changing, updating the LDRs to fit what the comp plan is saying.
So does anyone want to go first? And these, and
Start here.
as an example, like when I give my ideas, they're gonna be thought bubbles that are not articulated well, okay, so welcome to my world.
I only have two, so Paul goes, we'll start at the left.
Oh, sorry, Monica, if it's helpful, I just, I put together a very rough, just Excel spreadsheet timeline, just to
Oh,
give
great.
everybody a sense of what we're looking at. And I will, if it's okay with you.
But that wasn't in the packet, right?
No, this is something that I've just put together today so that we all had a rough understanding of, it's going to be hard to read because it's very small. Just the way I formatted it was not the best. But I guess that's the really overarching structure. We're all the way to the left, and I will zoom in to make that easier to read. So we're over here in March 2022, approximately this spring, March to May, June, was when we were setting our policy priorities, identifying planning commission and city council priorities, establishing a more detailed timeline than this, and then establishing the draft structure of a plan. And when I say structure of the plan, it's that very high level outline. Here are the major topics that we want to cover, and not getting too far into depth past that. Then we have about a year, so July to July, more or less, for information gathering, tasking of feedback from committees and staff departments, the public outreach and input process, writing drafts to the new plan. And that's clearly an iterative process. Write a draft, get feedback, write a draft, get feedback. And that's what I said, and edit after the input. And the reason I include this partially is because it feels, 2024 in some ways feels like tomorrow, but also in some ways feels like a pretty good amount of time away.
It's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Especially if, depending on how much information we want to get, there's a lot of committees that meet once a month or, similar, like that we'd be wanting to be talking to. So we don't have a ton of time
And
considering.
lots of facilitated public
Yep.
workshops.
Public workshops, public input, because where we end up is we need to have a comp plan adopted by February of 2024. We like to keep a little bit of a buffer in there. So the goal would be for the city council to have adopted it by the end of 2023. Counting back all the deadlines for and requirements for notice and the public hearings, both at the city council level and at the planning commission level. That puts it back into about August of 2023 for the planning commission to have a pretty well finalized draft to have that public hearing and then send to city council. So when it feels like it's 2 years between, March of 2022 and February of 2024, it's really it's closer to a year of real working time, that sort of July to July timeframe. So I just threw this together just to put that in everyone's minds, put everyone on the same page, and now I'm completely open to talking about general topics, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
And as people are thinking about what they're going to say, the other thing that Kelsey and I discussed briefly was this concept of think about how things have changed
Mhm.
since the last time the comp plan was created. What kind of things were not even mentioned or considered within that plan that today are so front and center for us? Equity, climate change, those things aren't.
You're jumping into your list already.
Sorry.
You said you were gonna start on the left.
Okay, all right.
Starting here.
Well, I would like
Hey,
the
Amy.
comp plan to be more definitive and authoritative. That we all, seem to pay lip service to the great supremacy of the comp plan. But in fact, in the day-to-day kind of activities that we engage in, it seems to be kind of a wink and a nod to the comp plan. Yeah, the comp plan says that, but, and I think specifically, for me anyway, where I saw it most clearly was with the Hill property. That the comp plan says no encroachment on the Hill property. And, there was another section of the comp plan apparently that said, encroach all you want to, here's 500 houses to go and conserve property, so. I really think that the comp plan is,
Not tough enough.
no teeth. Yep. So that would be my recommendation, is we write a pretty hardcore comp plan.
I'd like to make.
Go ahead,
comment
I'm
on-
finished.
On that, Paul, because we've often heard that when the issue that you've just raised has been raised, we've looked at the comp plan and said, well, it's aspirational. And
Right, it's always the aspiration.
it is aspirational, but it's the aspirations of the community that we serve. And I think Paul is saying that we haven't served that community well enough by making the comp plan not enforceable, but using it sufficiently strongly within our land development regulations that we can't have what he described as you can go one way or the other depending on how you read it and what section you're looking at. I'm kind of sort of supporting what you say because I've felt the same thing. My 3 cents are, and you can guess what I'm going to say, but I think that the core of this comp plan should be refocused on climate change mitigation and the necessary land use regulations, land use changes that we would need to make to support that core objective in the comp plan. Focus on the preservation and expansion of open space for recreation, community garden, agriculture, silviculture, and the health and safety of South Burlington residents, because that's really what we're supposed to do. The Planning Commission. It's one of our core responsibilities is to safeguard the health and safety of our community. So you can call it resilience in a way, but climate change mitigation includes making us more resilient, and that means in some way, in some sense, focus on, as I said, on the preservation and expansion of open space for all kinds of end users.
I'll go last. Do you want to go, Ted?
Okay, you sort of taken part of my thunder. Let me step back just for a quick second. Is that one of the concerns I have suddenly seeing this and thinking the comp plan, I feel like we still have so much on our plate, like TDRs. We're that's still up in the air. I don't know what the heck we're doing with TDRs at this point. So,
Well, we have
I'm worried.
Jessica's list.
I'm sorry.
There's Jessica's list of the things that we didn't do.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that. But anyway, so I just want to make sure we can clean our plate of some of these things that have been on since I've been on the planning commission. View quarters. This is one that has been something that I haven't even addressed for a while because I gave up. But so anyway, point is, I think we need, I know we have by regulation or law to do the comp plan, but I also hope that we can get some of these things that have been sitting, dormant for a period of time.
Ted, if I could just jump in there.
Sure.
The point of me showing the timeline is because some of those processes require tasking to other committees, getting feedback from other departments, having public outreach, doing iterative drafting.
Mhm.
There's a lot of space in between, between now and February of 2024 to be tackling a lot of those, the things that didn't make it onto the the most recent LDRs, other planning things, small projects that come up along the way, other things in the work plan. There's a lot of space in between, but because all of those engagement processes take such significant amounts of time, a lot of which is actually sort of passive time for the planning commission itself. There's a lot of meeting space all the way through to 2024 to be tackling things like TDRs. And the intention is that those will be, peppered in between all of these discussions of improving and updating the comp plan. And believe me, TDRs is very high on the list. And it's something that Paul and I will be working a bit on a 3-month work plan to kind of prioritize some of these things. But my intention, at least just speaking for myself, is that TDRs will be something that the Planning Commission is dealing with in the next few months, or is at least beginning to deal with in the next few months. We just wanted to get the comp plan discussion started so that we can do some of the back end work, some of the information gathering work, and start some of the engagement processes so that when we do have the meeting space and time to actually respond to drafts of the comp plan, all of that background work has had time to occur.
Yep. Good.
So I just wanted to clarify from a
I appreciate that.
scheduling perspective.
Yeah.
Just to take that a half step further, one of the things that Kelsey and I have been organizing ourselves to do since the completion of the last big round of LDRs is to be working on a larger arc with you. So, the comp plan, having a plan now for the next 2 years of completing that. Your work plan that you set back in December, not being meeting to meeting, but as Kelsey just said, 3 months out, you'll have if not, exact meeting by meeting, a set of objectives of what you're trying to complete. We think this will help you to get all these things off your plate and not be in a position of saying, well, are we, next meeting, are we going to be able to get to this or not? To have longer arcs in advance for you.
Yep.
And so we're really excited about this. And I think, it's
Good.
we appreciate your all pressing us on these subjects, and we want to deliver in a way that is a little more further in advance. So thank you.
One addition to what Michael and Paul had mentioned, I've always had let me see, I'm trying to think how to say this diplomatically.
There's
Yeah,
no
should-
way to say it diplomatically.
The Chittenden Regional Planning Commission has always been an issue in my mind. On one side, they're a terrific resource, but on the other side, so often people often people who aren't in agreement with things that I agree with, say, the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission says this or wants this or whatever. So somehow I'd make it clear in the comp plan that we're making the decisions. And again, I'm not articulating what I'm trying to say, but that it's our document, it's our city.
South Burlington first.
And that's right. There's only one life preserver and it's ours. So, but we appreciate their research and so on, but we just want to make it clear that, so you get the gist, and I don't want to go further, but just to be really clear that.
And I think that's helpful in the both in the big, but also in the small. So, we've been working for a long time on improvements, for example, the Williston Road. There's some who would view Williston Road as being a major corridor to connect for people to get from Richmond and Williston into Burlington or Winooski. And there's others who would say, there's also the interstate for that. And while people are welcome to come through, it's not a priority to get through. And that's something that, we've been able to communicate over time, and, the street narrowed in one portion of it, and having the guidance about what our objectives are within our community can carry through the plan in big ways and small ways like that, which gives us the clear guidance, not just to the RPC, but to VTrans, to our own citizens, to our businesses. What are we expecting?
That's a
And-
good example.
If I can jump in on that, I feel like I'm talking a lot in this meeting, but if I can jump in on that a little bit, the comprehensive plan is a guiding document for the city's policies, but it is also what other organizations look to as the statement of what the city's policies are. So that ranges from everything from the state and federal governments to grant agencies to the regional planning commissions. And this is the opportunity to make those big statements about what South Burlington is prioritizing. And then when, we go for grant funding for something, or we needs VTrans support for something else, we can point to, on comp plan on page 42, it says that this is a priority of South Burlington. It says that this has the support of the city. So it's a great summary document for some of those processes, as a statement of what South Burlington wants. That if you have a situation, I don't know what it could be, but if you have the situation where Burlington or the CCRPC or the state or whoever is saying, oh, you don't really mean that. That's not what the policy of the city is. You can say, no, it is. Here it is in the document. So that's when you want to make sure some of those policy statements are made, as Paul said, clearly and fairly unambiguously, that that's the policy of the city.
Well, I just clarify, I don't know, beat this to death, but a great example are the streets. Because if we want to try to get like Heinsberg Road to get, I call it the redneck highway, but it's, 60, 70 miles an hour in many places. Well, it's like pulling hen's teeth to try to get the transportation and, all these other different agencies to lower, but, it's our town, and suddenly, that's one of the roads, and Williston's another road, and Route 7's another road. And, that's the balance. We love those roads and so on, but it's our city, and suddenly here's the sign says, welcome to South Burlington. Okay, so.
Well, and that's a great example also, Ted, because, a place like Heinsberg Road is a state highway. They ultimately have the choice,
Right.
and they have their sort of default perceptions about not perceptions, goals as to what they're trying to accomplish. They will move the needle a little bit depending on what a community is interested in. And the more that the community is really clear about what it wants, the better chance there is of moving that needle.
Yep.
We don't get to decide
Right.
in and of ourselves what happens to it, but if we're very clear in our policies of what we want, our chances of getting success go up.
Okay, so is it my turn?
Yes.
I guess I really appreciate how you guys were able to keep this to a few points that were so big, because mine were like small points and a lot of them. So I think the first one that I would go to, which is relatively tight, but I really like Paul's use of the word teeth. And I'm also learning, as always, so much from spending time with people in the Chamberlain neighborhood. And I really feel that that portion of our town is an area that we need to own with some teeth. And I'm learning that there are things that are, since the last time this comp plan was done, well, I won't even get into it, but I feel like we can have some more teeth there, because that is a very valuable part of our community. And I think that our comp plan should present it as such. So, and then the other big picture, which really ties into all these little things that I had, someone else used this, they were hoping to come tonight to speak, and they used this word, and we've been hearing this word of forever homes. All of a sudden you're hearing forever home. You want your, oh, that's going to be my forever home. I would like the comp plan to make South Burlington your forever town. And that means, when you're young, how can you start here? Do you have to rent? Might you own? Is it expensive? When you're like, what can we do to make sure that we're providing a place for people to evolve here with their needs, either in their own home or move to another neighborhood, move within a neighborhood. But what can we do to really keep the community wanting to stay here? And that would also include on the other end of things, may provide amazing places for people to want to downsize. Because there's this lack. So if this whole concept of creating community that wants to stay here in South Burlington, but have the flexibility to find what they need, for their needs. And I hope that makes sense. I have all kinds of little examples that we'll get to a more detailed at some point. But there are some ways I think South Burlington can really be a leader in this. And the person who wanted to come and speak, and I guess this is a question I have too, there are some state level bills that are being passed. An example previously was the accessory dwelling. So the state made a change to accessory dwellings, and it caused us to go back and make change to our LDRs, which wasn't really in our comp plan. But there are some state bills that are being discussed now that I still think we can add within our comp plan. So fitting within this lifestyle, it kind of works within congregate homes. It's House 720. It was just changed to House 720. But there's something that we can do to enable people who have limitations, disabilities, developmental disabilities, that can make South Burlington their forever home. Teenagers that are disabled, or young adults in their 20s that are disabled, don't necessarily want to have to just live with 2 other people that the state requires. They might want to just live in a home with a bunch of other 20-year-olds that also have disabilities. And, and those regulations aren't easily found in Vermont. So making South Burlington a place that a group home like that can create a forever home, can let us lead the way for other communities as well. And so I guess it's looking to what's being discussed at the state level and what can we do to fit within that and be a place to start it. So I have more on that to share later, but that's an example of, because there's just nothing. And so people are going to Boston and wherever else because they don't have it here. And I think we can do better. So.
Before I cut you off, before you also use the word equity, was that something you want to mention?
Well, equity to me can fit into that too, but equity is a word that's nowhere in our comp plan. And we've been starting to talk about it in terms of, I think that the fact that we're one of the few cities in Vermont that have established basically a citywide inclusionary zoning. That's fantastic. That was not written in our comp plan. I think there's a lot more that we can do to ensure that we're thinking about all of our community and just discuss what that means. So I think that's definitely, I would put that right up there with climate change.
We're not a receiving community for immigrants, are we? Not officially. Burlington is, I know, but South Burlington not, right?
I don't know whether the structure of, you're talking about the refugee resettlement program. I don't know enough about the program to know whether it's municipality by municipality or area by area and described as being a municipality. So when Rutland is one, I don't know if that means Rutland but not Mendon. But that's
No, I'm thinking of Monica's mentioned
Right.
equity, but I'm thinking of diversity and vibrancy. I mean, look what immigrants have done to the Old North End. I mean, what a fantastic place it is to be now. And we don't have that feeling here.
Mhm.
You know,
Well, part of why we wanted to have this discussion with you tonight, as we are at the very beginning of this process, is to think about how we want to develop the plan. Being clear and having teeth, Paul, having climate action be at the core of it, thinking about South Burlington as the first goal, and then something like equity is, as we're certainly learning about this more and more. It's something about it's also about how you build the plan. It's not just the results of the plan, but it's who you engage in developing the plan. So this is really helpful to hear these things today. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you for adding the word diversity. Okay, is that helpful for now? Is there any more? And anyone else have anything to add before that's what you're looking for? Fantastic. Okay, I think we're moving on to consider street names. Number 8, consider street names, name requests for the O'Brien Eastview neighborhood.
I have an idea.
I had a few comments on the staff's recommendations, and I'm so sorry Jessica isn't here because she loves this. This is her favorite
I
thing.
had no comment on staff recommendations. I just made a note for myself that I moved to accept the applicant's proposed street names. Done.
I had, oh, the applicants.
Yes, why would we want to change them?
Yeah, do you want to give us some? Two
So
cents on
they're,
that?
they're very minor changes. The applicant has agreed to to switch Mabel Way for
Yeah.
Barn Road, because frankly, Mabel is the mother of she's one of the O'Brien
Mhm.
brothers, and it's a more important name to South Burlington than Barn Road, and they agreed that that's a good idea. The other ones that we had were just too long. Get windy days like yesterday, we wind up with 2 signposts, and it really starts to look sort of ridiculous. So our Public Works Department recommended some slightly shorter names. So instead of Red Barn Road, instead of Potash Brookway, Potash Drive. Shorter names can fit on a single signpost, fewer public works
Oh, but I
problems.
loved Red Barn. That's the Red Barn. I mean, but they don't have to say road on it. They can say RD, right? Seriously, was that too long?
Mostly it was the Potash Brook one. Oh, I remember the Red Barn is a problem because that's the name of the business right up the street now. That's not on the same street, so
I see.
unfortunately that was already taken. But I agree that
Yeah.
Barn
be
Road
nice.
is sort of sounds kind of meh also.
All right, I'll change that. I'll move
So
to
I'm
accept-
actually trying to find your recommends, Paul. So
it's at the
it's in the
beginning of the
beginning in the packet.
I just want to say one thing before you make your motion. I always wanted to have a street named after me.
Hey, it's 2 for 1 if you get one named after you, Paul.
Yeah, oh,
There it
that's
is.
right. Yeah. No, not Paul Street, Engels Avenue.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Maple Way, they're doing Red Barn Road. The alternatives that they submitted was Barn Road or Red Barn Avenue. Does Avenue help it or not?
Not really. I mean, we can, how about this? If you are comfortable with Barn Road, we can, if you're willing to do that, we can double check with Public Works and see if, the problem is Red Barn is the name of the business.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I don't think we should belabor this. I think
Oh.
I would move to accept the staff's recommendations.
Second,
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Even though I want it to be Engels Avenue.
Sorry.
But I
Paul.
really like the Leo Lane, Daniel Drive and Maple Way.
Yeah.
That's very
I think
sweet.
that's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's very sweet. Okay, meeting minutes. Michael, make that motion. Paul,
Alright.
you want to make the motion?
No.
Because I am ready this time to
Alright.
support that motion.
I move to approve the minutes of
Oh, sorry.
January 11
January the
and
11th
January 25.
and January
And
25th,
we have a February set, don't we?
February
It's
the
not in the agenda, but I did look at it and I'm cool with that one as well. Can we add that or I'm the one that held it up before, I think.
February was the most recent, I think.
Oh, so these are making up for the, okay. So as of right now, it's the January 11 and is there a second?
Sure, second.
Paul seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Done.
Stellar performance.
Woohoo.
Yeah,
Other business?
If we're out of here by before
right.
9 o'clock, then Monica gets a standing
Woohoo.
ovation.
It's a gold star.
Gold, so, well, there's only 4 of us, so I said
Okay.
Sino. But is there any other business, Paul? Notice
Just
the
to let
Shelburne
you know
Select
that
Board?
Shelburne Select Board is considering adoption of an interim zoning amendment. Interestingly, they're using it, well, in a very specific to limit the height of multifamily buildings in their form-based codes to 2 stories. So just FYI that they are,
So you're gonna tell me inclusionary zoning.
nope, form-based code.
That's probably a lot.
Just as the
For the,
most quickest clarification, the February meeting minutes were not included in the packet just because of when we
Right,
got
so they
them from
didn't vote
Sue.
on those ones. So.
Right, I was
Yeah.
just making sure that everyone knew we didn't just forget
Yeah.
about them, just the timing.
That's great. All right,
Sure, that's their
motion to adjourn.
We are.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, we adjourn, right? We all agree? Woohoo.
What's their form-based code area?
Their form-based code area is Shelburne Road from the South Burlington line, which is about Mitsubishi, down towards the village till yeah. And it's, what's interesting is they chose to make it